Title: Raw Meat Me Tombone. Creator/author: Drawerwolf. Chapter 1: Fresh Meat. Scotty, is that poster ready? Scott picks up some chips and dips it in beef tartare, / egg yolks and munches, while designing his guitar. Almost done. Burp, excuse me, said Scotty. Must been the brain jello again, said Scotty. Well, tell me when you finish, Scott burps. Must been the beef tartare, Scott, and Scotty laughs. Scott puts a sword inside his guitar. How does this look? Scott shows Scotty his guitar. Rayawad, said Scotty. I think it's missing something, dude, said Scotty. Scotty gives Scott some fake blood. I made it myself, Scotty said, licking some of it off his fingers. Want to try some? Scotty wipes his fingers and his hair. I'm a bit stuffed from that beef tartare and chips, but actually I know just what to use it for, Scott said, holding the fake blood. He pours some on his guitar and uses his fingers to make designs. How about this? Scott shows Scotty. They both say Rayawad and laugh. Dude, remember that giant hawk that was carrying our trailer and drop it down, said Scott. I almost totally forgot about that dude. That scared me. I thought we was gonna die, said Scotty. I wonder, was we dreaming or ate too much pizza that night? Something in my guts tell me what I saw wasn't real, said Scott, laughing. It's alive, Scotty said, and shows Scott the poster. Raw meat HM, I love it, Scott said, smiling. I told you it was cool. Scotty shoves some gummy worms in his mouth. Want some, bro? Scotty shows Scott a lot of worms in his hand. It's missing something, said Scott. What? Scotty said, chewing. This, said Scott, putting fake blood on the gummy worms. Yummy, get in my mouth, you tasty worms, said Scotty, shoving more in his mouth. Scotty looks at Scott. Scott puts fake blood on his hand. What you doing? Scotty said, looking at Scott. I'm playing bloody gore. Scott turns around and tackles Scotty, putting fake blood over him. Scotty uses his fake blood hands and puts some on Scott. They both roll around on each other on the floor covered in fake blood. Scott gets on top of Scotty. You're done, said Scott, laughing. Am I? Scotty puts gummy worms in Scott's mouth. Ah, gross. Scott gets off of Scotty. I warned you, dude, Scotty laughs. Scott coughs a little. Was the candy too sweet? Said Scotty, looking at Scott. Scott looks out the window and sees a full moon. No, not now, Scott says, and coughs the fake blood and gummy worms out his mouth. That time of the month again? Scotty said, looking at Scott. I won't even know how that feels since I'm not a girl, Scotty. Scott's voice gets a little deep. Scott throws a glass to the wall and yells. Scott. Scotty gets a closer to Scott. No, Scotty, I don't want you to get hurt. Scott tries to move away from Scotty. It's for your own good, buddy. Scott's shirt rips off. Whoa, said Scotty, looking at Scott. Don't just stand there, hand me my calm medicine, Scotty. Scotty drools a bit and looks in the cabin for the calm medicine. Scotty drool hits the floor. He noticed the drool is green. Shoot, said Scotty. Scotty grabs the medicine out the cabin. Got it, Scotty said. Scotty hears a loud growl in his ear and drool dripping on his shoulder. Scotty turns around slowly and sees a big werewolf. He shakes a little and looks up at it. Scott, is that you? Scotty said to Scott. The large wolf werewolf makes a huge roar in Scotty's face. I take that as a yes, said Scotty, looking down at the floor at the medicine. He tried to pick it up, but before he do, the giant werewolf grabs him with his claw and throws him. Scotty flies back and gets slid across the floor. You're a strong furry, said Scotty, laughing and trying to get up. The giant werewolf howls and gets on all fours and charges at Scotty. Easy boy. Scotty gets up and runs. He jumps over the werewolf and goes to the medicine. Yes, Scotty opens it and takes one out. The werewolf gets on top of Scotty and tries to bite him. Your breath is gonna kill me before your teeth do. Scotty throws the pill in his mouth. The werewolf chokes a bit. Scotty opens a can of soda and pours it in his mouth. Swallow, dude, swallow, said Scotty. The werewolf swallows and changes back to normal. He coughs. Scott snatched the drink out of Scotty's hand and chugs it down. He swallows. You're a lifesaver, dude, Scott says while catching his breath. Scotty starts to twitch a bit. Dude. Scott looks at Scotty. Sugar, said Scotty. You need sugar? Said Scott, looking around for sugar. Scotty's eyes turn white. He makes strange sounds at Scott and goes to him. OMG, you're a zombie, said Scott looking surprised. Brea ions, said Scotty. I got your Brea ions right here. Scott picks up some gummy worms and shoves them in Scotty's mouth. Scotty chews them. Scotty's eyes changes back to normal. Gummy worms, you know me well, said Scotty chewing. You never told me you was a zombie, said Scott. And you never told me you was a werewolf, said Scotty. Cool, they both high-five each other. Scott sniffs, he sniffs Scotty. Oh, what you doing? Said Scotty looking at Scott. I smell something human. Scott sniffs more and looks around. He looks at the window and sees a woman with a camera. She runs away with the camera. Bingo, said Scott smiling with his sharp teeth. He runs to the door and opens it. He runs behind his trailer. Scotty runs after him. Well, looks like our cupboard is blown, said Scotty catching his breath. Not quite. Scott picks up a piece of hair and sniffs it and smiles. Are you gonna chase after her? Said Scotty. Scott smiles with his sharp teeth. I never let a meal go to waste, Scotty. Scott licks his teeth. Scotty looks at his clock. Shoot, we late for the concert, dude. It started 3 minutes ago. Scotty goes back to the trailer. Scott smiles and looks straight. He laughs and puts the hair in his pocket. AM coming, Scott says to Scotty going back inside the trailer. Scotty grabs his mini drum set. Scott looks around for his guitar. Hey dude, did you see my guitar? I could have sworn I left it in the corner, Scott says looking everywhere. Found it now, let's go. Scotty throws the guitar at Scott. Careful, I just paint this thing and I made it myself, said Scott. Scotty opens the door for Scott. Don't we need a shirt? Said Scotty. Who needs shirt if you got flesh? Said Scott smiling. They both walk out the trailer and into the woods. Scott sniffs the air. You smell that, said Scott. Scotty rides his skateboard and sniffs. I smell air, said Scotty. Know the smell of the undead, said Scott. We must be close, said Scott. So much fog it's hard to see anything, said Scotty. Totally agree with you, said Scott walking and munching on some shrimp chips. You got the sign? Said Scott. Of course, Scotty shows Scott. Good, because we are here. Scotty looks up, it sees a lot of zombies. Scotty, take that stick and put it in the ground and place the poster on it, said Scott handing Scotty a stick. On it, dude. Scotty spits a nail out his mouth and uses his fist to bang the poster on the stick and bangs the stick into the ground. Done. Scotty looks at the blood on his knuckles. Dude, you're bleeding, said Scott. Bloody fist bump before the show starts? Said Scotty holding his fist out at Scott. Scott bangs his fist on a tree. His knuckles bruise and bleeds. Scott fist bumps Scotty. Blood buddies for life, said Scott and Scotty smiling. Scott lets out a loud howl. The zombies turn around and looks at the stage. Scott and Scotty takes their place on the stage. The lights turn on and off. Red and green smoke goes up on the stage. Scott puts his collar around his neck. Don't I look chokeable, Scotty? Scott looks back at Scotty. Totally chokeable, said Scotty, pouring fake blood on his drum set and himself. Want some? Said Scotty looking at Scott. Yes, pour it on me, said Scott. Scotty puts a lot of fake blood on Scott. Let's rock and roll, said Scott. Who's gonna roll? Said Scotty. It's just a saying for let's rock, Scotty. Scott turns to Scotty rolling on the floor yelling. Dude, get off the floor, said Scott. Scott helps Scotty off the floor. Scotty grabs Scott to the ground and puts him in a chokehold. I can't believe you felt for that, said Scotty laughing. Scotty, not now, said Scott. What, you tap out? Said Scotty laughing. Scott stops moving. Scotty laughs. What, you gonna pass out? Said Scotty. Scott continues not to move. Scott, you didn't actually fainted, did you? Scotty said. Chapter 2, Brainless versus Fleabag. Looking at Scott not moving. Scott, said Scotty looking concerned and releases. Scott wakes up and throws Scotty to the ground. He puts his hand on his chest. Who fainting? Said Scott showing his teeth. The lights come on both of them. Scotty and Scott looks at the crowd. All eyes on us, said Scotty smiling. Scott laughs awkwardly while taking his hand off Scotty's chest. This isn't over, Scott whispers in Scotty's ear. Can I at least get a hand? Said Scotty. Scott turns around and growls at Scotty. You really are a werewolf, Scotty says to himself and gets up and goes to his drum set. Scott grabs his guitar. Scotty sits at his drum set. Scott taps the mic. Hello, said Scott. The zombies makes loud sounds. They sang hi back, said Scotty. How can you understand them, said Scott. I am a zombie, remember, said Scotty, looking at the crowd. The lights turn red. Scott smiles, showing his teeth. Scotty looks at Scott concerned and begins playing the drums. Scott yells into the microphone. Are you gummy worm brains ready? Scott said, loud and screaming. The zombies make loud sounds and hold rock cymbals in the air. Scott plays his guitar and begins to sing. My heart dies for your love. If I was drowning, would you come flying down like a dove? Scott sings, screaming. Scotty bangs the drums so hard that fake blood gets all over him. He licks it while continuing to play the drums. Corn syrup, said Scotty, banging the drums more. Scott continues to sing. Your voice takes away my silence now. I am in the dark, cold bruise and broken, waiting for you to return. Scott flies his guitar loud and swings the chains around his neck. Scotty bangs the drums louder. Chain me up, spit me out, that's all you ever wanted to do. Scott sings deep and louder and swings his chains more. Scott screams into the microphone. As Scotty finishes his drum solo, Scotty hits the cymbal and finishes the song. Scotty gets off his drum set and stands next to Scott. They both bow down. The zombies make loud sounds. Scott goes to his microphone, catching his breath. Thank you, undead, for not being dead at this concert. The zombies makes loud sounds. Thank you, Scott smiles. Scott sniffs the air. He sees the women with camera. The name of our band is R.A.W. Me. Said Scott, smiling at the camera women. He makes out a loud howl. The zombies chants. Thank you, all sleep dead tonight, said Scott. Scotty throws fake blood into the crowd. Don't worry, it's corn syrup. The zombies lick it off of them. They really love sugar, said Scotty, smiling and licking some off of him. I still have some more if you change your mind, dude, said Scotty. Scotty looks around for Scott. Scott walks into the crowd, smiling and going to the camera women. She runs away. Scott makes a loud howl. He turns into a werewolf and gets on all fours, chasing her. Oh no, this can't be happening. Scotty runs after Scott. The zombies touch Scotty as he walks through the crowd. Scott sees a brain poster. I can't look at that, I'm going to transform. Scotty tries to look the other way, but he sees more brain poster. Scotty gets on the ground, covering his head and trying to walk away. He goes by a tree away from the zombies. He feels drips on his leg and noticed the green drool again. Not again, said Scotty. Scotty yells out in the woods, trying to look for him. Scotty walks and stops again. Why, Scotty said to himself. His eyes changes white. I can't let this control me, said Scotty. Scotty makes zombie sounds. He slaps himself. No, I'm not doing that, Scotty said to himself. He runs and looks for Scott. His speed becomes faster than normal. That's cool and strange, Scotty said to himself. Scotty looks at the fur trail. I know how to find you, Scotty smiles. The woman runs fast with the camera. Scott makes wolf sounds and chases her. The woman comes to a dead end. She looks back at Scott. Scott growls and gets closer to her. He jumps in the air, ready to pounce on her. No, said Scotty, tackling Scott to the ground. They both roll down a hill into the water. Scott scratches Scotty on his chest. Scotty slaps Scott. Control yourself. Scotty grabs Scott's collar and pulls it, choking him. You are chokeable, Scotty laughs. Scotty gets up and bites Scott on the ear. Scott makes a loud whimpering sound and slaps Scotty off of him. Scotty falls back on the ground. Scott puts his paw on top of Scotty, inserting his nails in Scott's chest. Scott lets out a loud yell and tries to take his nails on his chest. Scott drools on Scotty's face. Scotty looks around for something. He grabs a fish out the water and throws it at Scott. The fish tail cuts Scott's face. Scott looks down at Scotty, angry. I am sorry, said Scotty. Scotty tries to take Scott's nails out his foot. Scott uses large werewolf hands and picks up Scotty by the neck. Scott, you want, said Scotty, bleeding out his mouth and chest, looking bruised and helpless at Scott. Scott opens his mouth and brings Scott's head closer. A pink smoke goes in the air. Scott sniffs and drops Scotty in the water. He looks around and sees the camera girl putting pink smoke in the air. Scott tries to go to her, and reach his arm out, but he falls on the ground and changes back to normal. Scotty gets to the edge of land and changes back to normal. Both of them passed out. The camera lady put her camera strap around her side and gets close to them. Two women come out the dark with colorful hair. "Are these the two?" said one of the women. "Yeah," said the camera lady, taking a picture of them. "A werewolf and a zombie," said one of the lattice. They drag both of them in a wagon. "Let's take them to the fire pit," said one of the lattice. They pull the wagon together. "What do these guys eat? They're so heavy," said one of the women. They all make it to the fire pit. They take Scott and Scotty out the wagon and place them on the grass. "The green hair one is injured," said one of the women. One of them blow healing fire on him and bandages him. "I hope he makes a good recovery," said one of the women. The other woman puts a small bandage on Scott's ear. "Looks like a bite mark," said one of the women. They blow healing fire on Scott. "Is he a werewolf?" said one of the women. "I think so." They touch his hair. "Cool," said one of them. They touch Scotty's hair. "He has pretty hair," said one of them. "I love green," said one of the women. "I am hungry," said one of the women. "Go hunt," said the camera lady sitting by Scott and Scotty touching them. Scott wakes up and looks at the camera lady. "Why?" "Oh, you," said Scott. The camera lady moves back. Scott tries to break out. "What you done to me? Where's Scotty?" Scott yells out, showing his teeth, trying to bite. "Relax, Wolfie, I healed you and save you both from killing each other. But I think you hurt your friend pretty badly," said the camera lady, pointing at Scotty. "Scotty," said Scott, looking at him with wraps around his chest. Scott looks at Scotty sad and cry a little. "Don't worry, he not dead, he alive, I healed him," said the camera lady. Scott lays his head on Scotty. "He better be okay." Scott shows his teeth. "Where are we?" said Scott. "The fire pit," said the camera lady. "My name Jewel," said Jewel, smiling at Scott. "Give me one good reason why I shouldn't eat you," said Scott. "I can be helpful. Me and my friends can help you with anything besides the fact we already healed you," said Jewel. "You didn't tell me your name." Jewel smiles at Scott. Scott growls a little and protects Scotty. "Don't even think about touching him," said Scott. Jewel looks at Scotty's ear. "How the ear?" said Jewel. Scott looks at her. He growls a little. Scotty wakes up. "I have the worst headache right now," said Scotty. "Why am I tie up?" Scotty looks around. "Scott." Scotty yells Scott name. "I am here, Scotty." Scott gets closer to Scotty. "Phew, I thought you killed me," said Scotty, laughing. "I almost did." Scott looks at Jewel and back at Scotty. That's okay, zombies are undead, remember?" Scotty smiles. "So you can't die?" said Scott. "I mean, yeah, I could, but I can come back and hunt you." Scotty laughs. Scott smiles and laughs a little. Scotty looks up and sees fire. "Fire!" Scotty yells out. "She trying to eat us," said Scotty. "Relax, if anyone gonna get eaten, it's gonna be her," said Scott. Jewel laughs. "It's just a little fire pit to cook our meals," said Jewel. "Trust me, I don't eat zombies or werewolves." Jewel smiles. "But I am curious how that tastes." Jewel looks at them. Scotty pees himself. Scott looks at. Chapter 3, The Weirdest Night. Her serious. "I am kidding, I'm just kidding." Jewel laugh. "You guys are funny," said Jewel. The two women come back with fish. "We found fish," said one of the women. "Great, I'm starving," said Scotty. Scott stares at Jewel's. "You can trust me," said Jewel. "I don't trust a soul, not even dead or undead ones," said Scott. "You don't trust me?" said Scotty. "I have a trust problem, Scotty." Scotty looks at Scott. "You can tell me anything." Scotty lays on Scott. "Well, one day I was in a friend group with a lot of people, mostly males, and Onady, they just betrayed me. I don't know if I wasn't good enough or what it was, but they say they found a replacement that was better than me. I begged to stay in the group, so they told us both to fight for the placement. I thought they was crazy for that, but I fought. I almost killed the guy, but I had mercy on him. But I think I made a mistake not killing him because he got the best of me." Scott tries to take his arm out the rope. "See, I have a cut from my shoulder to my elbow. That's where he cut me. But I told them that he cut me, but they didn't believe me. And in the end, I know I won, and the battle meant nothing." Scott looks over at Scotty. Scott tries not to cry. So yeah, that's why I have trust issues. Because of betrayal, a tear falls from Scott's cheek. Scotty lays his head on Scott's chest. I won't ever betray you, Scott, said Scotty. Jewel looks at Scott. You don't have to worry about that here, said Jewel. Scott looks up at Jewel. What's the camera for? Said Scott. This Jewel grabs her camera. Actually you guys' biggest fan. Raw meat, correct? Said Jewel, smiling. Dude, we famous, Scotty says and smiles at Scott. Jewel pulls out some pictures and shows it to them. Scott and Scotty looks at it. Cool, I love it, said Scotty. Mostly the one when we was wrestling. Scotty laughs. Scott smiles. So you're a fan, said Scott. Yeah, said Jewel. We are too, said the two girls, putting a plate of fish by them. Jewel looks at Scott. Scott looks at her. I trust you, said Jewel as she takes the rope off of them. If you thinking about eating me, go ahead, Jewel smiles. I'm gonna think about that, Scott laughs. And gets up, stretches his back. Scotty gets up and stretches too. I feel like I came back from the dead, Scotty said. I'm not a zombie, but I can relate, Scotty. Scott cracks his neck. Scotty cracks his back. That felt good, said Scott. Table for two? Said Scotty. Of course, dig in, said Jewel. They both grab each other face and push it and goes to the fish. They use their hand and grabs a fish and eats. Scott rips the head off the fish and eats. You're a vicious eater, said Jewel. You don't know how bad I'm starving right now, Scott says, chewing and spitting. Chew your food, said Jewel. Yeah, chew it, Scotty says to Scott. Shut up you, Scott pokes Scotty. Scotty laughs. The girls touch Scott and Scotty hair. You like this? Said Scotty. Yeah, it's pretty cool, said one of the girls. The green and blue girl over here is Diamond, and the one with the pink and green hair is Amethyst and Jewel. Said Jewel. Interesting names, said Scott. That's totally awesome, said Scotty. Amethyst touches Scotty hair, and Diamond touches Scott hair. You like the look? Scotty said to Amethyst. Yeah, it's so fluffy, said Amethyst, smiling. You have a cool cut, said Diamond. Thanks a lot, said Scott. That's enough touching you too, said Jewel, moving their hand away. Scott and Scotty smiles at them. Scott looks at Scotty's chest. How the bruise? Said Scott. It's okay, it's not like I didn't get stabbed by a werewolf toenail before, Scotty laughs. Speaking of that, I feel something. Scotty looks down at his chest. He sees the toenail sticking in his chest. Speaking of toenails, Scotty laughs. This is gonna hurt worse than getting a guitar smashed in my face, said Scotty. OMG, Scotty, let me help, said Scott. Please don't hurt me, said Scotty, laughing. I will try not to, I will be gentle, said Scott. You gentle? Please, Scotty laughs. I said I'm gonna try to be now, stay still, and don't move, said Scott. Scott touches Scotty's chest. Scott looks up at Scotty and smiles. Scott makes eye contact at Scotty. If nobody ever told you this, you're a weirdo, seriously, said Scott, holding on to the toenail in Scott's chest. Scott looks at Scotty's eyes. How about you tell me a story while I take this huge nail out of you, said Scott. And what type of story? Said Scotty. Whatever's on your mind, said Scott, putting gloves on. Keep your eyes on me, not below, said Scott. That's gonna be hard, but I'll try, said Scotty. I don't know where to start, said Scotty, chewing under his scarf. Let's talk about why you wear scarves, said Scott. I don't think you'll like that story, it might be boring. Scotty scratches his neck and fixes his scarf. It can't be worse than mine. Scott keeps his eyes on Scotty. Tell us, said Amethyst. Scotty hesitates. Well, long ago I had a pet cat. Scott covers his mouth and laughs. The cat scratch your face up? Said Scott. It didn't, said Scotty. Diamond shoves some fish in Scott's mouth. Continue, she said to Scotty. Scotty smiles a little. I had a pet cat, and every day I would take care of it. It was a stray cat. Her name was Tiger Tail because her tail looked just like a tiger's tail. But one day I woke up and my cat was on me. It didn't move, it was lifeless. I don't know how it died. It must was sick, I should have caught on, I wish I did. And about the scarf. I wear this because of my cat. My cat loved this scarf. And so do I. But every night was pain and pain, I just couldn't take it anymore, so I did this. Scotty slowly removes his scarf from his face, showing cuts and a cheek hole piercing on the side of his mouth. Scotty shows his split tongue and burns all over his neck. All this I did all by myself, said Scotty. Scotty puts his scarf back on. Scott looks at Scotty's eyes holding the nail in his hand. Scott slowly takes Scotty's scarf down. It's okay, Scott said, looking at Scotty holding his hand. I never had a pet to even know how you feel. But I can feel a little bit of it, said Scott. Scotty, we all love you here, said Jewel. Tackle him, said Diamond. They all tackle Scotty and hug him. Scotty smiles. Scott joins in the hug. You guys hug so strong, said Scotty, laughing. We all here for you, both of you guys, said Amethyst. Jewel smiles. Can I get another fish? Said Scotty. Diamond shoves a fish in Scotty's mouth. Eat it, said Diamond. Scotty mumbles. NKU. Scotty chews. Make sure to swallow, said Scott, smiling. Scotty stares as his face reddened a bit. Scott grabs another fish and rips the head off. Want some? Said Scott. No, I'm fine, I'm a bit full, dude. Scott smiles. They all eat fish. Oh boy, I'm stuffed, said Amethyst. I got the tea, said Jewel. How did you make tea in the woods? Said Scott. I found some herbs, a mint leaf, and a tiny flower, said Jewel. You can put flowers in tea? Said Scotty. Kinda yeah, but don't eat them, Jewel smiles. Jewel grabs some clay cups and pour the tea in there. They all take a sip. This is pretty good, said Scotty. Said Scott. You guys are good, said Scott. But I still have the taste for meat. Scott looks at Jewel. They all pause and looks at him. I'm kidding, just joking, Scott laughs. Scott pulls out some soda. Since you guys shared, I got a little something to share myself, said Scott. Amethyst and Diamond grabs it. Soda, said Diamond, chugging. Amethyst drinks some. Sugary, said Amethyst. I actually got some sugar on me, said Scotty, pulling out some gummy worms. Don't be scared of the red stuff on it. It's not blood, it's actually red corn syrup. Scotty gives it to them and licks his finger. He accidentally puts some Scott's shoulder. Whoa, sorry, I can get that. Scott stops Scotty. I got it. Scott licks it off. Scotty smiles. So you do like sugar, said Scotty. It's okay, I don't want to get low blood sugar again, said Scott, laughing. I didn't know you had that, said Scotty. Nothing to be concerned about, Scotty, I'm fine, said Scott. They all eat the gummy worms. Jewel stops chewing. I know your band names, but what are you guys' real names? Said Jewel. Scott swallows the tea. Apologize, Lattice, Scott and my undead buddy, right here. Scott slaps Scotty back. Scotty chokes a little on the tea. This is the undead Scotty, said Scott, smiling. That's me, Scotty. Laughs. And you are the killer human half-wolf full moon, Scott. Scotty laughs. Not bad, Scotty. Scott smiles at Scott. Scotty smiles back. Scott coughs and shakes his head and looks up at the girls. So, do you guys have any stories? Said Scott. Jewel. Chapter 4, Spooky Night. And the others think. No, not really, said Jewel. You gotta have something, said Scott. Oh, I got one, said Amethyst, raising her hand. Go on, said Scott. One day we ran on a field that had a lot of big, juicy, flavorful watermelons, and we bust them open on the ground, and was eating them. And this random man came out with a water gun. Jewel cuts her off. How many times do I have to tell you that? Wasn't a water gun, it was a shotgun, said Jewel, looking at Amethyst. Well, I don't know what a shotgunny is, said Amethyst. That's all right, since we don't live in a city to know that, said Jewel. Anyways, we took some of the juicy watermelon with us. Amethyst yawns. Ost, got, show. Amethyst sleeps on Jewel's shoulder. Well, that was a very interesting and dangerous story, said Scotty. Right, Scott? Scotty looks at Scott. Scott sleeps on Scotty's lap. Scotty smiles and rubs his hair. Diamond sleeps on Jewel's lap. Well, let's call it a night. Jewel smiles at Diamond and Amethyst. Are you guys staying? Said Jewel. Yeah, we gonna crash the night here. Scotty gets up and holds Scott in his arms. Scott howls a little in Scotty's arms. Your friend sleeps like a puppy, said Jewel, laughing. Yeah, he does. Scotty smiles at Scott. Time to take this pup to bed, said Scotty. And time to take these two fire breath to bed too. Jewel laughs and holds Diamond and Amethyst. Need a hand with them? said Scotty. No, I'm fine, they don't weight a lot, they both 2 bags of potato chips, Jewel laughs. Scotty laughs. Well, good night, said Jewel. You as well, said Scotty. Jewel puts Diamond and Amethyst in the tent. You guys can sleep in the tent too if you want, it's big enough for all of us, said Jewel. Thanks, said Scotty. They all go in the tent. Ain't you gonna put the fire out? Said Scotty. Oh, no, that fire never goes out, said Jewel. That's cool, said Scotty, yawning. I'm gonna take your advice and sleep. Scotty laughs and goes in the tent. Come on, Wolf Boy. Scotty places him down and sleeps by him. They all sleep. Diamond and Amethyst snores. This is gonna be a long night, Scotty says. Sorry, my friends can be a sleepy bear sometimes, Jewel laughs. Scotty laughs a little. They all sleep. Hours later in the night, Scotty wakes up. He noticed Jewel left the tent. Scotty looks around. Scott moves around in his sleep. In T2. Hi. Scott says in his sleep, and hugs Scotty. Scotty said to himself and rubs Scott's arm. Scotty looks out the tent and sees Jewel. Scott grabs Scotty back. Whoa. Scott, chill. Scott keeps him close to him. Protect. Scott talks in his sleep. Scotty grabs a small cat plush out his pants and slowly moves Scott's arms and places the cat plush there. Scott hugs the plush. Protect, said Scott. Scott smiles and comes out the tent. Jewel sits by the fire. Hey, Scotty, whisper. Jewel knocks Scotty down. No, it's me, Scotty, the zombie guy. Scott moves his ears in his sleep and wakes up. He sees a cat plush and moves it off him. You're not Scotty, said Scott. Scotty? Scott comes out the tent. Scott sees Jewel on Scotty. It's not what it looks like, said Scotty. Scott tackles Jewel. Jewel's eyes turn neon pink and purple. She looks at Scott. Scott's eyes turn glowing white. Scott growls at Jewel. Jewel hiss at Scott. Scott shows his teeth and growls. Jewel hiss loud. Scott charges at her. Scotty stands in the way and try to grab Scott, but he accidentally slaps him. Scott whimpers and looks at Scotty. I'm sorry you're going crazy, I had to stop you, but I didn't mean to slap you, said Scotty. Scott turns into a wolf and whimpers and runs towards the woods. I'm sorry, really am, Scotty says in a low voice and gets on his knees watching Scott run off. Scotty looks back at Jewel. I'm sorry, this is all my fault, I should leave. Jewel changes her eyes back to normal and looks at Scotty. I'm not looking for any trouble, said Scotty, getting up, walking into the woods. Scotty yells his name out and runs. Jewel looks back at the tent and sees Diamond and Amethyst staring. Am I dreaming? Diamond wipes her eyes. Yes, you both are, go to sleep. Jewel slowly walks back to the tent. A loud wind sound gets heard. Jewel turns around and noticed the fire moving fast in the wind. Jewel closed the tent. Stay in there, said Jewel. Why? Said Amethyst. Unless you want to be steak and potatoes, do as I say and stay, said Jewel. And you gonna be the broccoli to go with the delicious steak S&D potatoes. Jewel turns around and knocks the goblin out with her fist. More goblins come. Jewel fights them off. They get on her. She knocks them all off. Her eyes change. She tries to blow fire, but they put a muzzle on her and tie her down. Jewel tries to break out. They carry her and put her on a tree stuck there. You almost had it, said one of the goblins. That's enough, I'll take over from here, said a half-human and half-goblin. Haven't we met somewhere? Jewel looks the other way. The goblin lady grabs Jewel's face and makes her look at her eyes. Look at me when I'm talking, dragon, the goblin lady says, angry. She's a dragon? Said one of the goblins. Shut it, Sweaty, said the goblin lady. My apologies, my lady, said Sweaty. Now where was I? Oh yeah, let me reintroduce myself to you. Hit it, boys, said the goblin Lattice. The goblins snap their fingers and stomp their feet. Oh ladio, the queen. She's bad. She evil. She don't have a heart. She'll cut you and leave you there to bleed. When you see her, bow down to the queen or sniff her feet. Sweaty sniffs the queen feet. The goblin lady kicks Sweaty, and she'll make you feel for pain for the rest of your life, Sweaty sings, and spits a tooth out. Oh, The goblins sing more. The goblin lady puts her hand in the air. Please shut up, you guys sound horrible, the goblin lady shouted. One thing they forgot to mention was my name. My name is Giselle, the queen of this forest, the queen of goblins, and used to be your queen, until you thought it was a good idea to escape my castle and live your own miserable life with nobody, because you're a nobody. I mean, look at this trashy place, a campfire, a tent. I'm gonna tell you what I'm gonna do first. First, I'm gonna burn your little tent to ashes and dust. Second, I'm gonna find out, how does dragon meat taste? I was always curious. Is it sweet, savory, or smoky? Giselle laughed. Jewel mumbles. Yeah, I think smoky, but I'm not a smoky girl. I like my food a bit crispy, but not burnt. Let's hope that my men don't accidentally burn you. Giselle laughs. What we gonna do? Amethyst whispers to Diamond. Diamond eyes changes color and looks at Amethyst. Simple sister, we fight with all we got. Amethyst smiles and her eyes change color. Then I'm gonna show you no. Loud dragon sounds be heard from the tent flying towards the goblins. What the heck is that thing? Said Giselle, looking at the dragons attack the goblins. Diamond throws one of them back, knocking the queen down. Watch it, you fat nose, said the queen, getting up and grabbing her crown. Don't just stand there, you slow turtles, get them, said Giselle, fixing her crown. Amethyst kicks them. The goblins grab a net and throws it over both of them. They try to get out, but it's no use. Amethyst tries to fly out, but it's no use. Forget it, Amethyst, it's no use, said Diamond, looking around. Was this one of your stupid tricks? Giselle slaps Jewel. Diamond growls. Giselle smiles at Diamond and Amethyst. You guys did great, in fact you almost knocked me out, Giselle laughs. But really, you guys did great. Giselle claps her hands. Right guys, Giselle looks at the goblins. They clap too. Yeah, they clap louder. Stop the clapping, said Giselle. I know just what exactly to do. Giselle looks at the dragons. Breakfast, lunch, and you? Am gonna make a coat out of. She points at Jewel. Get the fire ready, boys, said Giselle, holding a small knife. At Jewel. Leave this one to me, said Jewel. Diamond blows some fire in the air. What you doing? Said Amethyst. Am trying to get help, join me, said Diamond. Amethyst joins in. Giselle laughs at them. Silly dragons, you can't escape, Giselle laughs. Scotty runs around in the woods looking for Scott. Scott, Scotty shouts. Scotty looks in a small bush and sees Scott sitting on the cliff with a friendship bracelet in his hand. I can sense you come out, said Scott. Scotty. Chapter 5, Sympathy, comes out the bush and walks a little to Scott, but not too close. I'm sorry, said Scotty. Scott looks at his bracelet and sighs. Scotty, I don't even know what to say, Scott said, holding his bracelet. You betrayed me, Scott stares into daydreams. Just like the other friends I had? Scott said with a tear falling from his face. Scott, please, it's not what you think, said Scotty in a sad voice. Scotty, if that's your new friend, then so be it. No one likes a flea bag anyways, Scott says sadly. Scott, said Scotty. Scott growls at Scotty. Save it, maybe I should have finished you off earlier, said Scott. Scotty gasped. I can't believe you said that, said Scotty. I know you see me as an undead freak, whatever, but let me tell you something. I care about you, Scott. You're the only friend I have that understands me more than my own mother do. What you saw back at that tent, I was trying to stop you both from killing each other. I don't like to witness death in front of me, Scotty cries. Scott moves his ears a little and looks at the bracelet and back at Scotty. Scotty, Scott said, getting up slowly and going to Scotty. Scott helps Scotty off the ground and hugs him. Scotty stops crying. It's okay, just hug me, said Scott, rubbing Scotty back and hugging him. Scotty slowly puts his arms around Scott. Do you forgive me? Said Scotty. Of course, maybe it was just me seeing it at a wrong angle, Scott says sadly. I apologize as well about what I said about, killing you, Scott says sadly. I just don't know how to see other people different now. A tear falls from Scott's cheek. Scotty continues to hug Scott. Well, we both can get through our problems together. Scotty holds Scott's hand. Scott gasps, looks down at Scotty's hand. Scott looks at Scotty. Scotty, I need to tell you something. Scott grabs Scotty's other hand. Scotty daydreams in Scott's eyes. Scott stops talking and looks at Scotty's eyes and turns around and looks back. Scott sees fire going up in the air. That looks like a sign for help, said Scott, letting go off Scotty's hand. Scotty stops daydreaming. Yeah, I think it is. Scotty shakes his head. We gotta go help them, said Scott. Scott looks up at the moon and smiles. Walks backwards on the cliff to the edge. Scott, you bet not, said Scotty. Scott smiles at Scotty. Scott begins to sing. AM falling into the night. Scott sings and makes himself falls down from the cliff and continues to sings. Scotty hesitates. If I die, I hope you sit in the front row at my service. Scotty jumps down off the cliff. Scotty screams. Scott catches him. Scotty looks up and sees a werewolf. He yells, "More." It's okay, Scotty, said Scott. I can't control it now. I'm not gonna eat you, said Scott. First you was a wolf, now you're a werewolf again, said Scotty. I can be both. Scott smiles with his sharp teeth. Scotty looks at him awkwardly. You sure you won't kill me? Said Scotty, holding on to Scott. Zombie meat does sound interesting. Scott smiles. Scotty gets nervous. Relax, like I said, I won't eat you. Scotty holds on to Scott. Scott looks at the moon and howls. Scott runs on all fours, speeding through the woods and dodging tree branches. Scott jumps really high over a gate. Scotty holds on tight nervously. Scotty, pretend him a pillow, that way you won't be scared, said Scott. Scotty relaxes on Scott and sleeps on him. I didn't mean literally, Scott says. Scotty snores. Scott looks back and smiles at Scotty and continues to run. Do you prefer soup or roasted, my queen? Said one of the goblins. Grilled, I want it crispy. Find some herbs. I don't want dry dragon meat, said Giselle. On it, said one of the goblins. And make the fire bigger. You can't cook dragons in a small tiny campfire, said Giselle. On it, said the goblins. And find me some water to swallow my meat down, said Giselle. We are on it, queen, said the goblins. Sweaty, do something funny while I wait for my meal, said Giselle. Sweaty begins to tap dance. Hey, race the water, my queen, said one of the goblins. Took you long green giants long enough. Giselle takes a sip. She looks at Jewel. You're gonna enjoy the show of your friends being cooked alive, and so will I, Giselle laughs. Toss to this backstabbing dragon and her stupid friends. Giselle raise her glass up. The goblins chant. Is that fire ready? Sweaty is making me bored, said Giselle. It's almost done, said one of the goblins. Good, said Giselle, drinking water. A loud howl gets heard through the woods. Giselle and the goblins looks back. It's okay, probably was just an injured wolf shouting for help, Giselle laughs, and drinks water. A branch snaps and the bush makes sounds. Giselle looks back at the forest and points at the goblins. Go investigate that stupid sound, but if it's a wolf, bring it to me alive. I always wanted a pet wolf. Yes, Queen Giselle. The goblins run to the woods. Giselle smiles and looks at Jewel. You ever had a pet wolf before? Jewel mumbles. Me either, said Giselle, laughing. The goblins get thrown and knock out. Giselle looks at them. You idiots, how did you let such a small creature get the best of you? Said Giselle. Giselle hears footsteps. Go get them, all of you, said Giselle. The goblins chant and run to the woods. They all get knocked out and thrown. A loud howl gets heard. A slingshot gummy worm hits Giselle, water out her hand. Fine, I'll do it myself, you weak idiots. Giselle grabs her small knife out her pocket and steps on the goblins towards the forest. Come to mommy, little wolf, said Giselle. Another slingshot gummy worm hits Giselle in the face again. Enough, Giselle says, angry, and pulls out her knife. Looks like little wolfie has a friend. Show yourself, and nobody gets hurt. Giselle looks around angry. I said show yourself. Giselle shows her cracked, out of shape, crooked teeth. A loud growl gets heard. Scott pounces at the queen in werewolf transformation. Scott knocks her back. Kill it, the queen said as she hits the tree and gets knocked out, and her crown comes flying off her head and breaks. Scott lets out a huge howl. Scotty goes by Jewel and takes the muzzle off her. I'm here to save you, said Scotty, taking the ropes off her. Thanks, said Jewel. Jewel goes to Diamond and Amethyst. We gonna get you out, don't worry. Jewel looks at them. That's Diamond and Amethyst? You guys are dragons? Said Scotty. Fire-breathing ones, yes, said Jewel, smiling. Jewel looks at Scott throwing the goblins. Your friend seemed to control his powers, said Jewel. Yeah, he's getting thier, Scotty smiles. Well, let's not stand around, let's help them out this net, said Jewel. Agreed, said Scotty, as they both try to break the net. No, don't, said Diamond. They both get electric and falls down. I wish I knew that sooner, said Jewel, getting up. I felt worst, said Scotty, as he gets back up and goes back to the net. Scotty, no, you're gonna get hurt, said Jewel. Look at this, Scotty shows Jewel his face under the scarf. This is a survivor of Rayal. Pain, said Scotty as he runs back to the net. Scotty puts his scarf back on. He tries to rip the ropes and burns his hands. He gets electrocuted really bad and drools. Almost the EIR, Scotty rips the ropes. Scotty faints and falls. Scott turns around with a goblin arm in his mouth. Scotty, you know, Scott runs to Scotty. No, if you touch him, you'll get electrocuted too. Jewel runs to Scott and moves him out the way and catches Scotty. She gets a shock and falls out too. She saved me, Scott said to himself, and looks at Jewel passed out by Scotty. Scott noticed smoke coming from Scotty's hands. No, said Scott, looking sad, and changes back to human. Allow us to help. Diamond and Amethyst flies out and goes by Scott. The two girls, your dragons? Said Scott. Yep, Diamond and Amethyst are dragons, said Diamond. And we gonna eat you, said Amethyst. She's joking, she only eats fish, said Diamond. Scott smiles a little. At least you two are safe, said Scott. The queen slowly wakes up. She notices her crown is broken. You foolish monsters dancing in mud, you broke my crown. Now I call upon the Cerberus to break every bone in your bodice. The queen blows her whistle. Did she just say Cerberus? Said Scott. The dog with the 3 heads? Yeah, I think so, said Diamond. Oh, a doggy? Said Amethyst. It's not a friendly one, I can tell you that, said Diamond. Why isn't it friendly? Said Amethyst. Loud barking and footsteps be heard. That doesn't sound pretty good, said Scott. A lot of trees come falling down, making his way to the ring, weighing in at 1,400,000 pounds. The Sare? Diamond cuts. Chapter 6, Nightmare in the Woods. Amethyst off. Not the right time, sister, said Diamond. Okie, said Amethyst, sticking her tongue out at Diamond. The Cerberus looks angry at Scott and the dragons. The goblins wake up and runs at it. Charge, said the goblins. And oh, you fools, fall back, the queen shouted. The goblins look back at the queen. The Cerberus stomps on them. And oh, my men are gone, the queen shouted. The queen blows the whistle louder. Kill them all, I want to see blood spots everywhere, said the queen. The Cerberus growls at them. Scott transformed back into a werewolf. Scott jumps on each tree and pounces into the air at the Cerberus. The Cerberus slaps Scott back. Scott falls close to the ground. Got you. Diamond scoops in and grabs Scott. Diamond and Amethyst blows fire onto the Cerberus. The Cerberus tries to slap them, but they are too fast. How you like that hot dog breath, said Diamond. Take that and that, said Amethyst, blowing fireballs at the Cerberus. The Cerberus blows fire at Amethyst. Amethyst dodges. Ha, said Amethyst. You missed, said Amethyst, smiling. You smell something burning? Said Amethyst. She looks back at her tail and notices it's on fire. OMG, my tail, Amethyst yells out and flies towards Diamond. Diamond blows fireballs at the Cerberus. Amethyst crashes into Diamond. Amethyst, what you think you're doing? Said Diamond, angry. The Cerberus slaps both of them. They falls back and hit a lot of trees. Scott continues to scratch and bite the Cerberus. The Cerberus tries to get Scott off, but he moves out the way. Scott runs on 4s and pounces at the Cerberus ear and bites it. The Cerberus shouts in pain. Scott shows his teeth at the Cerberus and continues to scratch. The Cerberus flicks Scott off. Scott flies back and lands on Amethyst and Diamond. What's up, dude? Said Amethyst. Hi, said Scott, holding on to his chest. Tier, no way we can beat it, there has to be another way, said Diamond in pain. We all bruised and beat, said Scott. If only we could shake hands and become friends, or calm it down, said Amethyst. Scott opens his eyes a little wide. I have an idea, said Scott. What, shake its hand? said Diamond. No, silly dragon, let's calm it down, said Scott. How? said Diamond. Scott thinks. He looks at the queen and sees the whistle, and looks at some clay cups on the ground. You two follow my lead, said Scott. Scott transformed back into a human, and so does Diamond and Amethyst. They both get up and follow Scott. Scott sees Scotty drumsticks on the ground and picks them up. He grabs the clay cups and faces them upside down. Scott cracks his knuckles. Diamond and Amethyst cracks their knuckles too. Ow, that hurt a little, said Amethyst. Scott smiles at them. He grabs the drumsticks. Not the best drummer like Scotty, but I'll try. Scott begins hitting on the clay cups. The Cerberus looks at Scott confused and slowly shrinks down. OMG, I can't believe that works, said Scott, playing more. Great rock solo, said Amethyst. What do we do? said Diamond. And oh, I said kill them, not jam to them. The queen whistles again. The Cerberus gets angry and grows some more. Scott plays the drums more and looks back at Diamond and Amethyst. You two take over while I deal with this pickled egg green apple witch or whatever she is, said Scott, giving Diamond and Amethyst both a drumstick. All you have to do is bang it, don't have to sound good, said Scott. Running in the forest. Giselle blows the whistle louder. Eat them, I said, Giselle shouts. I would eat you, but I'm afraid I might get food poisoning by the way you look, said Scott, showing his werewolf transformation. Oh, a werewolf, I don't really see those around here. Must be rare, are you the last of its kind? said Giselle. Scott growls. Listen here, Puffy Wolf, I'll work out a deal with you. You join me, and you won't have to deal with no more problems, dear, said Giselle, getting closer. Sure you don't want to keep fighting every day. Why not join me? We will recreate a new army of sodders for our protection. And you can have any meat you can think of. Beef, steak, chicken, hamburgers, probably not hot dogs since it tastes disgusting, but if you want it you can have, said Giselle, getting closer to Scott. Well, what do you say, Puffy Wolf? Giselle looks at Scott. Scott grabs her by the neck and chokes her. He growls in her face. Giselle pulls a knife out and cuts Scott across the face. Scott makes a whimpering sound and drops Giselle. Scott growls and runs towards Giselle. Looks like this isn't gonna be easy. Giselle pulls a gun out at Scott. Scott stays still and stares at Giselle. This is your last warning, join me, or die. My bullet is silver, which is a werewolf's weakness. Don't die trying to be the hero. Giselle aims the gun at Scott. Scott stares at Giselle and backs up. That's right, be a good boy, listen to your mommy, said Giselle. Listen to the sound of this punch. Jewel runs up to Giselle and punches her in the face. Giselle drops the gun. She grabs her jaw in pain on the ground. Scott looks at Jewel. Jewel smiles at Scott. Why, you little mythical disease? Giselle runs at Jewel with a knife. A giant falcon takes Giselle into the air. Giselle screams. Let go off me, big bird. Scott and Jewel stares at the falcon. I didn't know giant falcons exist, said Jewel, laughing. Scott puts Jewel on his back and runs backward. Diamond and Amethyst. Diamond and Amethyst. Jewel gets off of Scott and goes to them. They go to her and all hug. Scott turns back to normal and runs over to Scotty. Scotty, Scott yells out. Scott grabs Scotty's wrist for a pulse, but don't feel one. Scotty checks his neck for a pulse, but it isn't one there. Scott cries a little. Scott puts his ear to his chest and don't hear a heartbeat. Scott cries. Scotty, don't die on me in this way. Scott cries. Scott loosens Scotty's clothes and his belt and removes his scarf. Scott pressed down on Scotty's chest. Scott puts his lips on Scotty and performs CPR. Diamond and Jewel look sad and blows healing smoke. You're a good friend, said Jewel. Wait, don't a zombie only die if Amethyst stops talking? Its head is taken off, said Scotty with a little pain in his voice. He opens his eyes and looks up at Scott. Scotty sees Scott's lips on his. Scott's face turns pink. I'm alive, furball, you can stop kissing me, said Scotty, laughs and coughs. Scott smiles. Hi, Scott says, really happy, and hugs Scotty. Chill, I'm still sore, said Scotty. Sorry, I'm just happy you alive. You don't know how much I love you. I meant miss you, said Scott, shaking his head. Scotty smiles at Scott and tries to hug him. My hands are two burnt potato tots, but I'll still hug you, said Scotty, laughing a little. No, allow me. Scott picks Scotty up and hugs him. Scotty smiles. Ow, you're a tight hugger, said Scotty. Sorry, buddy. Scott puts him down. They all hear barking and get into defense mode. The Cerberus rolls over on its belly and barks. That is so cute, Diamond and Amethyst says to it. Amethyst rubs it. Look at its tiny paws, said Amethyst. And tiny teeth nose, Diamond rubs it. Can we keep it? They both said to Jewel. Well, Jewel looks around and sees a lot of trees on the ground. This thing did cause a lot of damage, sure, why not? Said Jewel, smiling. No, it's not way you guys are keeping that as a pet, said Scott. But you're a wolfy werewolf, said Jewel. That's different, said Scott. The Cerberus goes by a tree and pees. The Cerberus kicks another tree down. Looks like we have to train it, said Diamond. It goes to Amethyst and shakes its tail. I think it loves me, said Amethyst. Amethyst holds it. What do we name it? Said Diamond. What about Amy? Said Amethyst. I thought it was a boy, said Diamond. No, it's a girl, trust me, she pees like one, said Amethyst. They all laugh. It have scars, ah, poor thing, said. Chapter 7, the hour after 11 p.m. Diamond. I got it, Jewel blows healing smoke on it. The Cerberus heals fully. There you go, little pup, said Jewel, rubbing it. Too tight, Scotty said to Scott. I have to wrap it to keep it safe, said Scott. Can you take some off, said Scotty. You're such a cry baby, said Scott, laughing. Scott removes some. How's that? Said Scott. Better than before, said Scotty, smiling. I'm happy you're alive, said Scott, smiling. I'm happy we all alive, said Scotty. Yeah, said Scott, smiling a little. The Cerberus yawns. It goes to Amethyst and sleeps on her. Amethyst sleeps with it. They all make a circle around each other. We all gonna stay alert and sleep, said Scott, yawning. Good idea, said Jewel, yawning. Scott picks up Scotty and brings him to the circle. Scotty sleeps in Scott's arms. Scott smiles and places him down. Scotty hugs Scott in his sleep. Good night, bro, said Scott, smiling and rubbing Scotty's hair. Scotty talks in his sleep. Friday. End, said Scotty. Scott smiles and looks at Scotty and hugs him. Friend, said Scott. They both sleep. I call the love boat first before it happens, said Diamond. Jewel laughs. Maybe, said Jewel, smiling at Scott and Scotty. Jewel sleeps close to Diamond and Amethyst. The Cerberus gets between them both and sleeps. Jewel laughs. Good night, all of you, said Jewel, sleeping. The next day/night. The zombies chant. The stage lights up. How's the undead? You must feel 6 feet deep today, said Scott, grabbing his guitar. My friend Scotty can't play a drum solo for you guys until he heals up, but I have 2 fire-breathing dragons that can. Give it up for Diamond and Amethyst. Best girl drummers of all time. They play a little drums and stop. The zombies chants louder. And of course, give it up for Raw Meat, Scott says loud in the mic. Scotty smiles. I'm gonna play you guys a new song. It's called Undead Blood, but you can't sing a song about blood unless you covered in it. Scott pours fake blood all over him and his guitar, and puts his chains around his neck. Scott plays his guitar. The zombies chant. Undead blood is running through my veins. Undead blood, you better run, run, run. Undead blood will drag you 6 feet deep. The undead blood will eat your brains out. The undead blood take a bullet to the chest. The undead blood is never dead. They will still raise up again. Scott sings louder and makes a guitar solo. Diamond and Amethyst bangs the drums louder and hits the cymbal. Scott throws fake blood into the crowd. The zombies chant. Diamond and Amethyst runs into the crowd. Stage div. They jump into the crowd. Scott smiles. Scott jumps into the crowd. Scott laughs. Scott gets out the crowd. The Cerberus licks Scott. Scott picks the Cerberus up and rubs it. Hi, little cutie, said Scott. Where's Amy? Said Amethyst, yelling out. She's right here. Scott gives Amy to Amethyst. Ah, she loves you, said Amethyst. Jewel jumps on Scott. Whoa, who's this? Scott laughs. It's me, Jewel, the fangirl. Jewel laughing. You put on a good show tonight, said Jewel, smiling at Scott. Thank you, loyal fan and friend. Scott smiles at her. They all hug Scott. Hug Rock Wolfie, said Diamond. Scott smiles and hugs them. Did you guys see Scotty? Said Scott. Last time I saw him he was. Jewel thinks. He was standing right behind you. Scotty gets behind Jewel. Jewel jumps back. Stop scaring me like that, said Jewel. Scotty laughs. What's the gang doing here? Said Scotty. Just talking, said Diamond. Diamond and Amethyst looks at Scotty cast. Let US sign it, they tackle Scotty. I'm still sore lattice, said Scotty. They both pull out a marker and signs his cast. They put hearts and kisses marks and Thier names. Don't forget Amy name, said Diamond. Amethyst puts Amy name on it. Now you have tattoos, said Amethyst. Thank you guys, said Scotty getting up. Cerberus licks Scotty in the face. You're so adorable and dangerous, said Scotty rubbing Amy. Scotty looks around and noticed that Scott is gone. Where's Scott go? Said Jewel. He likes to watch the moon for an hour, said Jewel. Must be his favorite hobby now that he's a werewolf and wolf. Scotty looks for the cliff. Scott. Scotty falls through a bush and sees Scott on the cliff. Is that a human or a zombie? Scott laughs. Both. Scotty gets closer to Scott. Scott looks up at the moon. You must really like the moon, said Scotty. Yeah, it's the bleatophilus thing at night. Imagine just sleeping right here and letting the moon shine on you, said Scott. Do you have a favorite thing on this earth? Said Scott. I like the clouds, they look great, said Scotty. Well, unlike me, I can't touch the moon, but when we both die, we can touch a clouds, Scott laughs. Actually, if we had a rocket ship, we could touch the moon, said Scotty. Yeah, if we did, said Scott. Dude, remember that giant falcon I told you about? Said Scott. Yeah, what about it? Said Scotty. I saw it with my own 2 eyes. It picked that witch-looking thingy lady UO and took her in the sky, Scott said laughing. That's so cool, I can't believe I missed it, said Scotty. Don't worry, it's somewhere with its dinner, probably watching us, said Scott. Yeah, let's hope we not its next meal, said Scotty. Scott and Scotty laugh. Our band might get famous one day, Scott, said Scotty. In the woods impossible, said Scott. Performers perform at a lot of crazy places you wouldn't imagined, said Scotty. Don't tell me behind a Chinese restaurant too? Said Scott laughing. Of course not, or maybe I don't know, Scotty laughs. You left something by the way. Scott pulls out a cat plush. On my cat plush, it reminds me a lot of my cat. Scotty grabs it. And I think this belongs to you. Scotty pulls out a friendship bracelet. Scott puts his hand out. Put it on me, said Scott. Scotty puts the bracelet on Scott. Wrist. Scott grabs a marker. Can I sign too? Said Scott. Yeah, sure. Scotty holds his arm out to Scott. Scott writes on it. What did you write? Said Scotty. Read it, said Scott. Scotty reads it. Will you be my undead BF? Check yes or no. Scotty gasps and looks up at Scott with a pink face. Scotty checks yes. Scott howls at the moon. Scott looks at his cast. Wait, so you're my BF now, said Scotty. You're not the only weirdo, said Scott, taking down Scotty's scarf down from his face and takes it off his neck. Scott gets closer to Scotty. Scotty uses his scarf to block Thier's face. Get out of here, Diamond, said Scott. As Scott and Scotty both hold hands. Diamond cuts the camera. I missed it, said Jewel. Yeah, I call it first, said Diamond, smiling. You're cooking dinner tonight. Dang it, said Jewel. Jewel smiles at them. They both 2 best buddies, said Jewel. What I missed. Amethyst holds Amy and looks at Scott and Scotty. My. The end.